Headed into tonight, it was the biggest game of the season for Syracuse men's basketball, fighting for its tournament chances. Its ACC tournament chances, right on the bubble with NC State. Syracuse 14th, Syracuse 15th, NC State 16th. A lot of numbers, there's only two you need to care about. 74-60, that's the final score. The Orange win wire to wire, just the second time all year, and they firm up their standings for the conference tournament. We're ready to break it all down on Orange Press Pass. Welcome into Orange Press Pass after a win for Syracuse men's basketball. Ian Nicholas alongside Dan Shalam and Ben Chadwick. And guys, Syracuse got out to the early lead in the first half. They win 74-60 in a game that they needed after 3 straight losses. Dan, what's your first thought after this one?
Yeah, Ian, this was a massive game for Syracuse to get this win, build some confidence between this squad. My first thought on this game is that the big 3 for Syracuse in this game was Eddie Lampkin, Jair Davis, and J.J. Starling. Last game against Pittsburgh, Jair Davis and Eddie Lampkin only combined for 13 points. And then here today, they settle in. And the reason why Syracuse was so effective is because it's usually just the J.J. Starling show and one other player, but having 2 double-digit scores was the key to the win today.
Well, Dan, I'll tell you another reason why they were so effective. They smartened up in this game, right? They shot over 30 threes against Pitt last game. We all know how that went. 11-point loss to the Panthers. This time out, only shooting 2 threes the entirety of the second half. It went their way. The paint scoring was on all game long. They smartened up. They got the job done against a pretty rough ACC team. This is the way the night was supposed to go.
A lot of bully ball tonight out of his Syracuse team. Eddie Lampkin, Jair Davis getting it done. Let's show you how they got it done against an NC State team that over the weekend beat one of the best teams in the ACC in Wake Forest. But the Orange, they looked like one of the best teams in the ACC early on. Eddie Lampkin, who we just talked about with the nice catch off a J.J. Starling assist. 10-point lead for the Orange. But I told you, NC State, they beat Wake Forest just a few days ago, and they did it by hitting a season-high 13 three-pointers. Here's one early in this game from Dennis Parker. Syracuse still leads by 7. NC State needed every single point it could get. Syracuse was not going to let them get back in this game, though. Kyle Cuff off the bench, Dan, he made an impact.
Yeah, how about a timely contribution? Look at this tough bucket right here from Cuff. Would only finish with 4 points on the day. But Ian, that bucket pushed the SU lead up to 13.
It was double digits there, and how about a 15-point lead as more defense turns into offense. Chris Bell with the fake on the perimeter and getting it done down low, laying out like a starfish, exhausted after his and one. Syracuse keeping the lead well in the double figures with 2 minutes before the half. Ben said if he didn't hit a lot of threes on the game, Lucas Taylor, 1 of 3 on the game for Syracuse. It comes at a good time. 13-point halftime lead for the Orange. Here's a little more of that bully ball. Jair Davis getting it to go down, banking it in from the block. And Chris Bell again, Ben, not only feeling himself on the bench, but you know what? When he got back out on the court, he felt it too.
And there weren't a lot of threes in this one, but there weren't a lot of assists as well. But how about the big man, Eddie Lampkin, with the cross-court pass all the way down to Chris Bell for the beautiful layup. What a pass from the big man.
That made it a 19-point lead for Syracuse, their largest in an ACC game this season. The good times were rolling. But NC State and Dontrez Styles were trying to stop the Orange. He had 17 points in the second half. They did slash the lead to single digits at one point. It wouldn't matter. Starling with a strong second half for Syracuse. They win by 14. Kevin Keats and company, they lose. And guys, what are our biggest takeaways when you look at the statistical breakdown for the Orange who get back in the win column in ACC play?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's got to be J.J. Starling. Only 2 points in that first half. Turns it on in the second for 15. And then beyond that, just the way that this team played defense today, Ben, was so effective.
And you know who was on the entire game? It was Eddie Lampkin. I just talked about the assist he had, 1 of 2 he had on the day. 14 points, 15 rebounds, yet another double-double for the big man.
Somebody who saw Eddie Lampkin dominating in the Dome was our reporter, Ryan Bridges. Ryan, this was a huge game for Syracuse. We've already harped on that a lot. They needed this win to get really back in firm standing for the ACC tournament. Did the importance of this game shine through when you heard from Coach Autry and the players afterward?
I think especially when you hear from the players, Ian, that was certainly the case. That was the resounding answer that I got from a lot of the players. Kyle Cuff said that there was an energy shift this week. And I also think that having that week-long break really helped out Syracuse. I think Cuff actually said the most important thing that I heard was that this team was playing with nothing to lose. That's a little ironic because this team had probably more on the line tonight than they've had in the past month. But Syracuse, I think, had a good chance to reset their mindset, get back into the groove of things, and realize what they really want out of this season, and that's to make a run at the ACC championship.
So, Ryan, we speak of that run to the ACC championship, and we know that defense wins championships. So tell me, why was Syracuse so effective defensively tonight, second least amount of points given up this year?
I think, Dan, it was just a case of NC State missing shots. I talked to Jake Juan Carlos briefly in the locker room. He said that they did a good job about sliding into those gaps on those non-shooters and forcing more contested shots. But then someone asked Adrian Autry a pretty similar question to what you just asked me, and he flat out said, NC State just missed a ton of shots. 8 for 27 from three tonight. This is a team that shoots 32% from three coming into this season. They shot 34% from the field in this game. You're not winning any games like that. And while NC State was taking some contested looks, they had some open ones as well, and they just couldn't bury any of them.
Yeah, Ryan, you just mentioned the threes there as well. SU chucked up over 30 in their loss against Pitt just a few days ago. In this one, only shooting 8 the entire day. Did Coach Autry have anything to say about the offensive game plan change coming into this one?
I think the offensive game plan changed in that first frame, Ben. That's when Syracuse really started to figure out that, hey, Ben Middlebrooks is getting into a bit of foul trouble. That's the starting center, probably the tallest player on the floor for the Wolfpack. That means you got to go inside to Eddie Lampkin, Jair Davis, and that's where they started to have their bread and butter. There was one point in that first frame where Lucas Taylor, at the end of a shot clock, chucked up a three from the left wing. It actually swished clean through the net, and as Adrian Autry was walking back to his bench and sitting down with the rest of his staff, he was still shaking his head because of the fact that they could have got a better high percentage look down low. So even though the Orange were hitting those threes at a decent clip, 3 for 8 is something that you'll take if you're Syracuse, he still wanted them to go down low more, and they did that tonight with 46 points in the paint.
Interesting because, after that Pitt loss, Syracuse shot over 33s, and Adrian Autry said, oh, those were good-looking shots. So a little bit of a flip-flop from the head man, but you know what? It was in a winning effort tonight, so who really cares in the grand scheme of things? Ryan Bridges helping us early on in our show. Thanks so much, man, and we'll see you soon. When we come back, we are going to go a little deeper into those decisions that led to Syracuse's second largest win of the year. Stick around on Orange Press. Welcome back to Orange Press Pass after Syracuse takes down NC State 74-60. Ian Nicholas still with Dan Shalam and Ben Chadwick. We were just joined by Ryan Bridges, who was in the Dome. What was our biggest takeaway there, guys?
Yeah, for me, it's got to be the fact that even though Syracuse hit a couple of those big threes that he mentioned early on, that Adrian Autry was still upset with the shots that Syracuse was taking. They took so many threes. against Pittsburgh last game, and just to see that attitude change is something we really haven't gotten all season long. And to just see the accountability and that real change is something that at least I think has been missing.
I'm going to double up on that, Dan, as well. I mean, the fact that Adrian Autry was mad after a made three from Chris Bell that just went right through the hoop, no rim, no backboard, no nothing, and he's still upset. That is the type of coaching I think we've always wanted to see. He knows what the quality shots are. He knows what shots this team makes, and that wasn't one of them.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the screen, and NC State didn't really have a chance in this game when they're only shooting 38% from the field, and Syracuse over 72. These are just the numbers in the second half. In any half this year, Dan, we haven't seen numbers like this.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is that this team had so many points in the paint. They knew that Eddie Lampkin and Jair Davis were cooking today. So it was feed the inside, let those bigs really attack the post and get inside, and they did just that, and good things happened. Who knew that those two things resulted in that?
And NC State honestly looked like past Syracuse games in this one, right? Chucking up over 33s like we just talked about with Ryan in that Pitt game, shooting pretty atrociously like you just talked about as well. They really looked like reminiscent of the Orange just last game. They kind of swapped roles here today.
Yeah, nothing like that dome cooking, right? You go to Pitt, you give up over 80 points. You're giving up over 80 points, it felt like, in every game in the middle of this losing streak. But tonight, Ben, it was a defensive masterclass, the second fewest points that Syracuse has given up all year.
Defensive masterclass is one way to put it, right? I don't know if this is a defensive masterclass. We just talked about it because NC State shot horrendously, right? They shot horrendously, and it wasn't really Syracuse's defense. They weren't really clamping them up. They shot open threes that they just airmailed over and over and over again, Dan. I mean, all the Orange did was let the Wolfpack play their game, which is an awful one, right? The third worst offense in the ACC. SU only forced 8 turnovers in the end as well. This was not a SU defensive masterclass. It was just another game for the NC State offense.
I'm going to go against you here and say that Syracuse's defense actually put up a great fight throughout this game, and it wasn't just NC State simply missing shots. A lot of these were contested, and NC State only finished the game with one double-digit scorer, and that being Dontrez Tyrell, and for him too, all those points came in the second half. So Syracuse played some great first-half defense. Sure, things got a little sloppy in the second, but for me, comprehensive defensive performance.
Comprehensive. Big word. The only thing I was thinking about when you were crapping on NC State was, I mean, if they have one of the DJs back, does Syracuse even win this game? Anyways, that's a hypothetical question. We're only going to deal with the real stuff here. Dan, Syracuse plus 24 in the paint tonight. We talked about those high percentage looks. And although Adrian Autry didn't like when they shot the three, he loved when they got it down low.
Well, it was all because of, like you mentioned, Ian, the cooking. And that comes from the biggest Eddie Lampkin in this game. Another double-double for him. He's now up to the third most in a single season by an SU player. And he has been absolutely dominating on the boards for Syracuse. And not only that, Jair Davis really got involved in this game as well, Ben. And I think that was crucial for Syracuse dominating the paint, something we really haven't seen that much this year.
Davis and Lampkin, like you mentioned, I mean, SU's points in the paint were just 14 less than NC State's total, right? They scored 46 points in the paint in this one. They shot the least amount of threes they have in the entire season. They just kept beating the post. Right? I mean, just look at their 10 assists per game. There was no catch and shoot in this game whatsoever. It was just all feeding the post, letting guys play bully ball like Ian had mentioned before, letting Lampkin take his time moving into the paint, getting good quality shots like Adrian Autry said before, like Ryan said before.
And for me, it all goes back to the looks. Adrian Autry knows at this point, those low percentage three-pointers are simply not going to do it. Feed the ball inside. That's where your best players are at.
I couldn't agree more. We've seen the losses pile up with how much they've shot the three, and now they're shooting in the paint high-quality shots. It comes up in a big win here today.
Well, the guy that was getting fed the most down low was Eddie Lampkin, an absolute double-double machine throughout ACC play. That's why he is our Orange Press Pass Player of the Game. 14 and 15 for Eddie in the points and rebounds department. And tonight, making a little history, he is now tied for third most double-doubles in a single season in Syracuse history. It's not stat padding. He is that guy. On the offensive end, I don't even think you could find a better big man in a conference. So although it's been a completely lost season for the Orange and a solid result tonight, Eddie Lampkin reaffirmed that he's been playing his butt off since the start of January. Shout out to the Booty Juice. Shout out to Eddie Lampkin's restaurant. in downtown Syracuse. I got to get myself there. Anyways, we got to get ourselves to another break. See what I did there? When we come back, we'll go big picture, talking about where the Orange stand. Just a couple games left in their regular season slate.
STEM is precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to send those old STEM theories flying past the neighbor's house into outer space. Dare to program something internet-breaking, record-breaking. Dare to blow their minds. Dare to learn the difference between sedimentary and metamorphic rock. Go find those rocks. Dare to keep daring. Dare to STEM. Check out She Can STEM to get started.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Welcome back to Orange Press Pass. Ian Nicholas alongside Dan Shalam and Ben Chadwick. 74-60 win for Syracuse tonight against NC State in men's basketball. But Dan, still a lot going on around the hill. And what's really catching your eye outside of men's basketball right now?
Yeah, for me, it's got to be the women's side of things for Syracuse. Big tilt coming up against Pittsburgh tomorrow. Syracuse basically has to win one of its last two games against either Pittsburgh or Boston College to make the ACC tournament. So if you thought tonight's game was big for Syracuse men's basketball, tomorrow is an even larger battle on the women's side.
And Dan, can we please talk some hockey? I mean, those were my girls. They got a huge semifinal series coming up here against Mercyhurst. It's going to be an absolute battle in this series, right? The Lakers have won 12 of the last 13 matchups with the Orange. But the most important part about that is the Orange won the most recent matchup in a 4-2 win in the regular season finale over Mercyhurst. Look, these squads went down to the wire in that final regular season series, and I'm expecting a very similar result in this 3-game series in the AHA semifinals. I can't wait.
What's the Twitter, Ben? Where do people follow you for the coverage there?
At BChad214 for all of your Syracuse women's ice hockey updates throughout their AHA tournament.
A little bit of a shameless plug, but you know what? He's going to be on the road, so we got to give him the action. Ben, although Syracuse did pick up a nice win tonight on the men's basketball side of things to bolster its ACC tournament chances, we're not out of the woods just yet, and Clemson helping them out.
Clemson absolutely helping them out. Notre Dame is a huge win. They're down there in the middle, sort of end of the pack, right, in those ACC standings. So Notre Dame taking a loss there is huge. What I'm looking at, though, is that Auburn-Ole Miss game. I mean, I know it doesn't have many ACC implications, but if you had any doubts about who the best offense in the country is, I think all those doubts and all those questions were answered. 106-76 over an Ole Miss squad that was ranked just last week. That is unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, and then to keep it in the ACC too, Boston College against Stanford. Stanford up by 6 at the half. That could also be a good game if the Cardinal can help out the Orange. Would make things a little bit easier for Syracuse down the stretch.
Well, Syracuse hoping that these final couple games of the regular season is not the finale. They hope to get to the ACC tournament. They didn't clinch it tonight against NC State, but head coach Adrian Autry thinks if they do get to Greensboro or Charlotte or wherever in North Carolina it is, they got a chance to make some noise.
And if we get a chance to go to the ACC tournament, that's a new season for us. And that's how we're going to approach it. You know, when you start breaking down the games, you know, we were in a lot of games. We lost a lot of games that we had control of and got away from us late. So, you know, we feel confident, you know. But at the end of the day right now, we got to get ready for our next opponent and finish out the season. And then, you know, if we get to the ACC tournament, we'll go from there.
So let's talk a little bit about the ACC at large here. How much do you believe, Dan, and Coach Autry there saying that, you know what, we dropped some close ones and, you know, we can compete with some of the teams at the top of the conference?
Well, I don't know if I believe them fully, but what I will say is that if things do pan out like they are supposed to right now, Syracuse will actually end up playing Virginia Tech in its next game. That's who they're slated to play in the first round of the ACC tournament. Now, the only reason why I think that the Orange have a chance is because Virginia Tech is ranked 16th in the ACC for scoring offense, a defensive masterclass tonight. Parlay that into the next matchup, and you're looking like good things could happen, but it's still an extreme uphill climb to make any noise in the ACC tournament, and it's not even a guarantee you get there right now.
Yeah, and Dan, to your point, I mean, luckily for SU's atrocious defense, which it has been all season long, the second worst in the ACC. VT's offense, second worst in the ACC as well. It's a battle of the rough offense versus the rough defense, but it's a good matchup for Syracuse because their defense has been struggling. 80-plus points to Miami, unacceptable, but Virginia Tech, not really the team that's capable of doing that.
That's a noon game on Saturday, and if we're in the business of shameless plugs, CitrusTV on Twitter for the live coverage for CitrusTV. Anyways, let's get back to more pressing matters. And men's basketball this season's been a total wash, but they got to look towards the future. They got to bolster everything within this program. Syracuse athletics, they got to help them out. And Champion Cuse became a thing just last week. So, John Wildhack, can you explain to me, if I'm a Syracuse fan, why should I help you bolster your teams?
Absolutely, and I think there's great passion and great energy for Syracuse athletics and for all of our programs and what we accomplish with football. And again, what we will do with basketball programs as well. And we need their support. And in some ways, our fans and our alumni can more directly impact our ability to win now than ever before.
Well, just because they can doesn't mean they will. And Ben, do you think, this initiative, $50 million over the next 3 years, do you think Syracuse hits that? You think the fans are going to be rallying?
I would hope that the fans are rallying, right? Because that's the only way to get top-end talent in Syracuse. Why else would you come to Syracuse? Have you guys walked outside? I mean, it is wet, it is cold. I don't want to be out there. I wouldn't want to come to Syracuse if I was a top 5, top 10 recruit in any sport. I don't know why these 5-star recruits would either. This is a desperate attempt for Syracuse saying, hey, we want championships. We will straight up pay for them.
And this is a good thing, right? Because we know that the $20.5 million is going to be the cap once the House passes it on July 1st. This $50 million just goes on to that on the other side of not paying players, as you can see on our graphic right here. The $50 million is going to help with everything else. So player support facilities, the new athletic complex that's being built down over by South Campus. That's just going to bolster players to want to stay here, and Wildhack made it a priority. We want to retain and get the best athletes in the door over the next few years.
Noted Syracuse South Campus experts in Dan Shalam and Ben Chadwick. But Dan, this is not necessarily this House versus NCAA ruling, which is going to continue to play out over the next few months. Not the end of the traditional NIL era. As you see at the bottom of your screen, athletes can make as much money as they want from those other collectives and other outside businesses that they were already doing.
Yeah, so that's going to be all those sponsorships you see right now around Syracuse. Those deals are still going to happen, and the athletes are going to have the right to go and do those deals. But this Cuse Fund is simply about supporting our athletes and giving them the best facilities possible to succeed.
Champion Cuse, let's see if they can make it happen. Again, that number, $50 million over the next 3 years. And, really over the last 3 or 4 years, Ben, kind of crazy that we've gotten to this point in college athletics where money is just everything.
But I think it's a good thing, right? You have to think it's a good thing. These college athletes have been putting their all into all these sports, and they deserve this pay, right? Now, there are some legal things that we're not going to get into on this show, which people dispute and disagree with over time. But these kids deserve the money they're making. They make these colleges and these universities so much money for the work that they put in, for the effort they put in, for the skill that they have that they showcase on the court, on the field, on the turf, wherever it might be. It's about time they get paid.
I can tell you one thing. Syracuse men's basketball spent a lot of money in the offseason. But hey, you win tonight against NC State, and you're probably going to make the ACC tournament as a result. When we come back, you'll hear a little bit more from Dan and Ben. They're going to sound off as we wrap up on OPP.
Leaving hot coals improperly extinguished can cause a wildfire.
Hey guys, it's Smokey!
It looks as if Smokey is going to use the drown, stir, drown and feel technique. After the first drown, a good stir. Next, another drink. And finally, a close feel.
Is it cool? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Smokey, catch. Oh, my bad, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Thanks so much for joining us on Orange Press Pass. Ian Nicholas alongside Dan Shalam and Ben Chadwick as we're still breaking down Syracuse's win on the hardwood against NC State. And Dan, this big win obviously helping out the Orange to make the ACC tournament. And as we look at the conference standings overall, the teams that surround Syracuse towards the bottom, teams that they'll play soon, teams that they could play if they do make the tournament.
Yeah, those bottom two teams right there, Virginia and Virginia Tech. The Orange playing the last 3 games of the season, both teams that SU hasn't faced so far this year. And those two teams could be potential first-round games. As of right now, if the tournament was to start today, Syracuse would be battling up against Virginia Tech. We detailed that a little bit earlier. But, I mean, still, nothing is a guarantee, Ben, and this team could very well have it come down to the final day.
It absolutely could, and I mean, it's just so unfortunate. We had to go to a second page to see where Syracuse is on these ACC standings. But what we saw before, I'm looking at the top 3. I mean, it is the top 3 and then everyone else in the ACC. You got Duke, Clemson, and Louisville. They're all miles ahead of anyone else in the ACC. These are top 25 teams in the country, according to the AP poll, according to KenPom. No one else even comes close. One of those teams will be winning the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I already wiped out those 3 losses from Syracuse's schedule. But we're not out of the woods yet on Orange Press Pass. It's time for the 2 to my left to sound off.
Here's my sound off. If Adrian Autry really says that the ACC tournament is a new season, Syracuse has to prove it. This was by far and away the best defensive performance we've seen in months from this team. The last 2 of 3 teams coming up to finish out the year are horrible offensively. This is a prime time opportunity for Syracuse to build positive momentum defensively going into the ACC tournament. And if it's really a new season, the Orange have to show it. This season's been a complete wash. It's been a disrespect to Syracuse basketball on a national stage all season long. But you can change all of that come March in the ACC tournament. And here's my last thing that I will say, is that even if you lose in the first round, go out with some fight. Don't just get steamrolled and let the season be over. Show some true heart.
Yeah, I completely agree, right? This is a disgrace to what Syracuse men's basketball stands for, what it once was, what this season has been straight up disrespectful. Like you said as well. For me, it's about damn time, right? This game was a long time coming. Syracuse with 3 straight losses, letting up 80-plus points to middle-of-the-pack ACC teams, including Miami, the worst team in the ACC. They let up over 80 points to. That is unacceptable. They played one of the worst teams in the ACC tonight against NC State, and they played them like they should have. They beat them by 14. They held them to 60 points. They played NC State as bad as a team they were. That's how Syracuse played.
Well, I guess after hearing you guys sound off, doesn't feel like if Syracuse makes the ACC tournament, they're going to pull at NC State. Doesn't seem like you guys are. Who knows? Yeah. That's the beautiful. That's the beautiful thing about March. Yeah. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Syracuse men's lacrosse hasn't been great this year, unless you ask Harvard's head coach. Dan, maybe they right the ship after back-to-back losses against Utah. We'll have that coverage on Saturday.
Yeah, Syracuse basically repeating what they did last February, losing to 2 ranked opponents in Maryland and then Army. But the big thing is this should be a bounce-back trip. This should be a team bonding trip. First time that Syracuse is heading out to Utah. Create some big momentum out there against the Utes. Have it be a blowout. Come back and beat Hopkins.
Talk about another team that needs to bounce back too, right? Those 2 straight losses for Syracuse are unacceptable for a team that has been winning national championships for a while now. Can't happen.
You'll be there?
I'll be there.
Your Twitter?
Dan_Shalam.
You'll be skiing?
I'll be skiing, and I'll be right back here on OPP come Saturday.
Maybe I'll be on OPP too, because I love this show. Ben Chadwick, Dan Shalam, Ian Nicholas. That's all for us. Syracuse over NC State by 14.